Today, Postgres is the second most deployed relational database behind MySQL, and it's the fastest growing one, so it's probably going to become the most deployed one within a few years, if not earlier. Our thesis was always, if you want to build something that's 10x better, you need to make a much different architecture decision, right? And so Parade has decided to go all in on Postgres. I think there's a really huge company to build here, like 20, $30 billion valuation company.
Meet Philippe Noël, the co-founder of ParadeDB, a seed-stage tech startup that is redefining PostgreSQL database in a truly unique and transformative way. Now, despite being early stage, they've already secured a few enterprise logos, including Alibaba. So let's dive in. Philip, thank you so much for coming. Very excited to have you here.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
All right, let's dive in. Can you tell me what you're building and what is that big problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, I'm building a company called ParadeDB. You can look us up, paradedb.com. We're building a competitor to a database tool called Elasticsearch, and we're doing that on top of a different database tool called Postgres. The short story for people that are not familiar is the database that powers most of the software applications that you see today isn't very good at doing, let's say, search-facing experiences. So you go on Amazon, you search for a product that actually uses a different database than the one that might be, let's say, responsible for processing the business data of the company. And when you have two databases, you need to keep them synchronized, you need to send data between them. That opens up room for a lot of things to go wrong. And ParadeDB solved this problem by essentially upskilling the database that most companies use, which is called Postgres, and making it capable of rivaling with a company with a database called Elasticsearch to build those search-facing experiences.
Got it. So if I understand it correctly, basically the traditional way of setup would be something about having the PostgreSQL system or database, and then you layer additional systems applications on top, and then you would have like ETL tools in between, and that would
Correct.
complicate things versus what ParadeDB offers is now consolidated features around the search and advanced analytics, and it all lives within the Postgres.
Correct. Correct. That's a very good summary.
Awesome. Awesome. And then what would be some practical benefits to businesses going with ParadeDB, whether it's like reduced cloud costs or reduced number of specialized skills that they need to maintain those systems?
Yeah, excuse me. There's three main reasons people pick us. The first one is when you have those ETL pipelines that you mentioned between two databases, it actually creates it's responsible for a lot of downtime for applications because they break for a variety of reasons. You can also be in a situation where the data that is in each of the two databases is different due to something that went wrong or some delays in the propagation. They can directly impact the user experience. Parade makes that go away. You don't need to do this data movement, and so that problem goes away. Another one is in terms of performance and cost, Parade is a lot more performant and a lot cheaper. This is due to the fact that the data representation for these two databases is different. And when you convert one to the other, you incur compute, but you also you can't make use of all the same optimizations that are specific to something like Postgres. And so this leads to more data being accumulated on the search database. And then the third reason is Postgres is known for being a very reliable database. It has very high data integrity. A database like Elasticsearch is known for quite the opposite, actually. So for a lot of companies that have very high requirements, like in the financial sector, for example, that reliability is very, very important. Those are typically the main reasons people pick us. You're right, though, that in practice, more people are familiar with Postgres. And so there's some sort of nice benefits to making it easier to have skilled employees that can man, the systems. But those are kind of, I would say, the side benefits.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, those are pretty strong points. Now, let's talk about some of the use cases. And the most exciting use case that I saw was with Alibaba. And you guys being such a small company, early stage tech startup, how were you able to get on Alibaba's radar?
That's a good question. So they reached out to us. Alibaba integrated our product within one of their data warehouses, um, which is for people not familiar, it's basically like really large scale databases that are used for processing a lot of data asynchronously. Um, if you want to do this kind of functionality in Postgres, there's no tooling other than ours. That's it. There's some like basic functionalities within Postgres, but they're not anywhere close to what a dedicated database offers. And in Alibaba's case, going to something like an Elasticsearch would have been really, really complicated for a variety of reasons. And so they basically had two options. Um, find us online. I actually don't know how they found us. I mean, we're an open source company. I'm sure they did their research that way, and or they could build it from scratch, and they decided to purchase our solution.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I think probably having this online community helps as well, uh, especially if they are supportive. But again, that's probably a testament to the quality of your product that you're building. Cool. And then during the evaluation process, I believe Alibaba actually compared you to Elasticsearch on their final stages. So, what were some of the benchmarking or performance metrics that they used to make the decision?
Yeah, they usually so they did. Yeah, the results look quite nice. They compared us in terms of performance to index the data, which is the process of making it searchable to the application. They also did benchmarking around the amount of search queries they could run concurrently. For example, they found Parade to be about the same size of indexing, about twice as
Mhm.
fast in the
Nice.
processing of the index, and then about 5 times faster in the query per second. And so they were honestly those results were better than expected. So so it worked out nice. Yeah.
That was actually my next question. I wanted to ask you, like, were there any big surprises for you? I'm sure like Alibaba was surprised to see those results, but were there big surprises for you during the evaluation process? And it seems like there were. Uh,
Yeah, there were. I mean, we were also much earlier. So when they reached out to us, this was less than a year ago, maybe around April, but it's coming close to a year. And obviously, by now the product is very good, but about a year ago, we were less than a year old as a company. It worked well, but there were a lot of things that needed improving. We certainly didn't expect it to perform that well.
got it. Got it. Now with Alibaba, I know it's a pretty huge enterprise company. They have vast amounts of storage and data that they need to perform analytics over and do search. That being said, though, do you see ParadeDB benefiting only like medium to large companies, or you think smaller companies, including tech startups, can actually benefit by using ParadeDB?
Yeah, we have a lot of smaller organizations that use our product. We're open source, which means you don't need to pay us
Hmm.
to be able to use it. A lot of small organizations will benefit from the free version. Most of the revenue that we make in the areas where we do things that, yeah, the revenue we make, basically the add-ons on top of the free version, appeal more to the big enterprises. That's why we talk about them more often. We have partnerships that are becoming as well with database tools that are very popular amongst small startups, where Parade will be available directly within there. And so I expect that will also facilitate adoption for smaller companies.
Got it. Got it. Cool. And then how you guys were able to basically extend the native capabilities of PostgreSQL in those two areas, like real-time search as well as the analytics. What were some of the big challenges that you faced along the way, and how were you able to overcome those?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I mean, I don't know how technical the audience is or how, curious people are to go into those details.
You can keep
But
probably at the higher level.
yeah, yeah. But at a very high level, there are two things that we do that people build in databases to make them faster for performing search and analytics type of queries. One is to basically process the textual data to store it into tokens or like chunks of words essentially that can be used to match against. And Postgres did not have the capabilities to do this with the state-of-the-art algorithm that exists. They implement a more outdated algorithm. And so Parade has introduced these algorithms inside Postgres. And there's a lot of APIs that can be used within the Postgres code base to kind of make that possible. It's
Mhm.
not easy, but it's possible. So that's one. And then the second one is Postgres as a database stores data on the disk of the computer in a
Mhm.
row format. So different cells of a specific row are stored next to each other on the hard drive. And this is really good for processing small amounts of data that you need to retrieve very quickly. But when you're doing analytics, oftentimes you may want to get the total value of a field. So if you imagine a database where you have sales transactions, maybe you want to get the total number of sales transaction values to get the sales you've done in a month. That actually requires taking a specific column of the database and sort of summing all of the categories. And in order to make that faster, you actually want to store data not with different blocks of the same row together on the hard drive, but with different blocks of a column together on the hard drive. And so Parade has also sort of brought in these innovations inside of Postgres. And the detail of it is, perhaps beyond the point here, but that's kind of what we've done to make it better. So ParadeDB actually doesn't change the interface. And that's part of the pitch, right? Customers are happy with the interface that Postgres offers. But we do change some of the things behind the scenes so that you get much higher performance when you were using the interface that you're used to.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Now, speaking about the installation and deployment process, how does typical deployment process look like for a company that might be potentially thinking to switch from this traditional setup with Elasticsearch to ParadeDB? And like how long it might take, how difficult or easy that is?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on their situation. In general, what customers do today is they have a Postgres database, at least the customers we service, they have a Postgres database and they have this ETL or data pipeline between that and between their Elastic. When they deploy Parade, they essentially add us to their existing Postgres, and the data is already there. So they don't need to move data. What they will need to do for the migration is they will need to write new code for their application that actually queries a ParadeDB database instead of an Elasticsearch. And our query syntax is slightly different than Elastic. That's really where most of the work is. Now, the reason I said it depends is because it depends how complex their Elasticsearch story is, right? For some companies, it can be a matter of a few hours. Some companies, it can be as much as like, 2 weeks, let's say, if they have a lot of queries.
Okay, that's still not bad. I mean, if we're talking about 2 weeks or 2 to 4 weeks for large enterprises to install and deploy, that sounds like a
Yeah, it's
quick.
not bad.
Okay, okay. All right. In terms of the future product features, which one, I guess, what can developers expect from ParadeDB?
More of the same and faster. We have pretty good search capabilities are very good now. Analytics capabilities are decent, but they're not anywhere near as good as they should be. By the end of the year, I think they will be. So we have a lot more work we're doing on analytics. Obviously, we do a lot more work nowadays also with the vector search and the AI search capabilities, which are very relevant with the whole AI workloads that happen around the world. So those are probably the main two ones that we're building. And then the next big thing I could say is um, like ease of adoption, right? The
Mhm.
product was historically pretty enterprise oriented. It did require a little bit of effort to get running. We're spending a lot more time making it really easy now and integrating it in places that people expect it to be with other industry partners so that it's like that simple to be able to have access to it.
Got it. Exciting stuff. Now let's switch gears to your background. Can you talk about your the school that you went to, your prior experience with starting Wist, and ultimately what led you to start building ParadeDB?
Sure, sure. Yeah. My background, I grew up in Quebec, French part of Canada. I moved to the US for university. I studied at Harvard, studied computer science and neuroscience. Um, I, yeah, my senior year, I started in a different startup, as you mentioned, called Wist. It started as a remote desktop solution for creative professionals. So the idea was, it was the beginning of COVID, and the idea was people couldn't really work from their big computer workstations in the office. So we were running big workstations in the cloud with graphics cards and giving them remote access to them. This eventually turned into being a browser that was powered in a similar fashion because most people that we talked to actually powered their applications through their browser. And eventually we realized that this was quite a small market, frankly. And we made so many mistakes on the way that it really wasn't taking off. So we closed the company down and took a few months, and eventually we started Parade. We started Parade. So in the few months that we took off, we we built a bunch of applications, basically things we were interested in. We spent a lot of time working between search engines and vector databases and Postgres. Realized it was really, really, it had a lot of complexity. And then we joined Y Combinator, talked to other people, and realized this was actually a very shared problem. So we decided to start working on it.
Got it. Yeah, majoring in computer science, neuroscience in Harvard, that's pretty impressive. I know your co-founder Ming is also majored in computer science from Harvard. How do you
Yeah,
guys
that's right.
divide the responsibilities of running the company between you?
It happens pretty naturally, to be honest. I feel very fortunate to be working with him. He's a very smart guy, and he's very smart at things that I'm not as good as, and vice versa. And so Ming is our CTO. He's really the technical mastermind. We talk a lot about product directions together, but at the end of the day, when it comes to implementation details, he very much has the final say, and he always makes the right decision. So it's great to have him be in charge of that. Um, he does a lot of our content marketing as well. He's a very good writer. He's a better writer than me for sure. And a variety of other things based on, who excels at what. I do tend to do more of the sales, for example. I handle a different part of the technical of the tech of the product, although less and less nowadays. And maybe I should say like things that are internal facing, he handles, and things that are external facing, I handle. It just kind of evolved that way over time.
Yeah, makes sense. Good complementing each other's skills. You've mentioned YC. I'm curious to hear your experience in YC, and I know they are pretty selective when it comes to like taking startups to their school. So, how was your experience there?
YC is amazing, honestly. They gave us so much. I really like it. We joined YC. We had, inklings of an idea of what we wanted to build, but frankly, we weren't too sure. We hadn't fully decided on this yet. YC was really helpful in bouncing ideas. We met some really amazing people that are very impressive, and the community's been great. I highly recommend it. Um, there's a few downsides to doing YC. I think the only one people mention is they take a good amount of equity, but honestly, I think at least when we started, our first company had gone to nothing, so we told ourselves, 7%, which is how much equity they take. 7% of nothing is nothing, right? And most startups go to nothing. So if it increases the odds that it becomes something, that's actually a pretty good deal. And I think we feel strongly that was a pretty good way to look at it now.
That's great to hear about your experience. Now, talking about the total addressable market for you guys, I know it's big because a lot of companies are accumulating lots of data. They need to perform certain analytics over that data. And what's more exciting is that the market is probably growing for you. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the total addressable market for you and as well as ideal customer profile.
Yeah, yeah. We sell to companies that use Postgres as a database. Today, Postgres is the second most deployed relational database behind MySQL, and it's the fastest growing one. So it's probably going to become the most deployed one within a few years, if not earlier. So the market is big. And then from that total subset of people that use Postgres, whichever subset has search and analytics needs, which as you point out is a pretty big share of it, but it's not all of them. So exact numbers is TBD, but it's large. We typically work with companies that are, at least from a commercial standpoint, we work with companies that are, let's say, at least 50 employees and up. We found that before companies have about 500 gigabytes of data inside their database, the existing functionalities of Postgres are kind of sufficient for them to do what they need. It's not perfect, but it's fine. So typically we sell to the company's CTO, we sell to the company's VP of platform engineering or VP of engineering, chief architect, those kinds of roles. Um, yeah, I do think the market is growing, and we'll be entering more and more of the lower end of the market or earlier end of the market, I should say, as we kind of do these partnerships with other folks. But yeah, that's how we think of it.
Got it. Now, I believe Alibaba was not your first customer, right? Who was your first customer? And then if you can share like some of the steps that you guys took to land that customer.
Yeah, they actually were our second customer, so they were pretty early. So I can't share our first customer because our first customer sells to the US government. And as part of working with them, they did not want us to share because they don't want their tech stack to be public um, for security reasons. You know, they would basically facilitate attacks. But our first customer was, there are a couple hundred employees in an organization. We actually got connected to them through an investor of ours, one of our angel investors. So perhaps, an unconventional story. Most of the customers we landed after that, we did through a more traditional sales method where we identified companies that we thought were promising. So we identified companies that were in the fintech sector because we saw that this was something that resonated well with our product. They were around 100 employee, which we thought was a pretty good size for a combination of having the pain point we're solving, having maturity and resources to go and solve that pain point, and also not being so large that they might be unwilling to work with a small startup. We thought that was kind of a pretty good, sort of like, good intersection of all of the parameters of the customer. And then we just emailed, the CTO or the vice president of platform engineering, and that was the end of it. And then, I mean, then we like talked to the team and like the technical evaluation and everything. Getting getting in front of them was actually a pretty small, pretty simple, straightforward process.
Got it. That's good to hear. Let's maybe talk a little bit more about the competition. So I know we've covered Elasticsearch at a high level. Are there any other direct or indirect competitors to you? And other like key highlights of why ParadeDB stand out that you want to mention?
Yeah, there's many. So Elasticsearch is a public company. They're a very large business. They've been around for 15 years. They make like over, I think, $1.3 billion in revenue. And actually, Amazon also sells Elasticsearch and they make $2 billion in revenue. So you could say the total revenue from just that product is probably like 3.5 billion or something. So it's a very large business. Obviously, as a result, there's also a lot of other competitors. There's many. I can name some if you want, but there's like five or six that are pretty high profile. The main difference with Parade is all of these databases that are competing with Elasticsearch are not integrated in Postgres. They're just like a standalone competitor that is honestly built in a very similar way to Elastic, but they try to optimize at the margins. Our thesis was always, if you want to build something that's 10x better, you need to make a much different architecture decision, right? And so Parade has decided to go all in on Postgres. And we've done it because we think the TAM justifies it, right? And what we're building is much better than Elastic for Postgres customers because we get to make design decisions that only make sense for those customers, right? So for example, we're moving the whole synchronization layer. That's only possible because we're built inside Postgres. All these other competitors that I mentioned, they also require a synchronization layer, right? Now, they can sell to anyone, but we can sell to only Postgres people, but significantly better. And there are so many of them that we decide that's actually a worth it trade-off.
That
I
makes
would say
sense.
that's the main differentiation.
Got it. That makes sense. I feel like that's a strong kind of differentiating point for ParadeDB being very unique in that regards. In terms of the market traction, we've talked about the Alibaba use case, your first customer. Are there any other key business metrics that you would like to share? I don't know. I know I'm mindful that the company is still kind of early stage tech, but I wonder if you can share any business numbers right now.
Yeah, I mean, we make good money. We sell to a bunch of different companies. You can see some of the customers that we have on our website. It's not the whole list, but it's some of them. We sell to fintechs, we sell to e-commerce, we sell to observability, sales automations. We sell like five, six-figure contracts usually. Um, yeah, there's nothing like very specific that I think would be super insightful to share, other than um, yeah, yeah. I don't know if there's anything specific to share. We raised a couple rounds of funding. A lot of this is not fully public. Yeah, that's the high
Got it.
level of it.
Got it. And in terms of the funding, are you at seed stage or further down the road?
We're a seed stage company.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And looking into the future, where do you see ParadeDB, let's say in 5 to 10 years, and what would be the North Star for the company?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, 5 to 10 years is such a long time in startup journey that it's hard for me to say something that is likely to be true. Um, we we have, we're following the footsteps of Elastic in a lot of ways. We're sort of going about the marketing and the product building in a very similar stages. So today we're building the foundational database, and we provide this as a user-facing database for customers. There's a lot of other markets that a company like Elastic has entered into. They also do security software, and they do log processing as well, which are very lucrative markets. We have our ideas for how we can go and enter into those markets as we grow as well, but they kind of require the core foundational database to be really mature before we can expand in those ways. So if everything goes well, based on what we know today, we have plans to eventually go in those directions, maybe in 1, 2 years, 3 years. I don't know how long exactly it will take to build a foundational piece. Um, and then I think there's a really huge company to build here, like 20, $30 billion valuation company. Um, yeah, but a lot of this is early hypotheses. We have a lot of work ahead of ourselves before we can, earn the right to play in those fields.
Yeah, I agree. Like 5 years in a tech world is a very, very long timeline. It's
Yeah.
hard to say what's going to happen, but that's helpful perspective. Thank you for sharing. And as you grow, you need to hire more and more folks and people. Are there any particular specific aspects of candidates that you pay special attention to? Anything that you would highlight?
Yeah, so we're a very small team. We're only 4 people, and we are hiring. We hire mostly engineers today. From a technical perspective, we care about engineers that are familiar with Postgres or familiar with database internals. There's actually quite a small group of people that fit that profile. So that makes hiring somewhat challenging, or challenging, maybe not the right word. There's a good number of people, but slow, right? We have pretty high standards. I will say the two things that we care a lot about on top of this is willingness to interact with customers directly. Not every engineer is interested in doing this, but it's something that we feel very strongly about. We like to have every engineer be at least, if not interacting with customer directly, at least seeing what the customers are saying. I think that's important to building the best product and also to providing the best service. So that's probably a big one. And we like to work with nice people.
That's nice to hear. And that's
Yeah.
actually a unique approach. So you want every basically engineering person be able to do customer support and interact with the customers if need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. I mean, we
Got it.
build a very technical product and it's used by engineers as well, right? So
That's
it's
true.
kind of like, talking to peers in a lot of ways, just at a different company. So it actually works quite well of our engineers talking to a customer's engineers. It's not like an engineer maybe talking to someone in a different business division, so
Yeah.
they might not be
Yeah.
as familiar. And also because we build such a technical product and we have such a technical customer base, the questions are just so precise that customers will have, right? And oftentimes you kind of need the person that was responsible for building those functionalities to really provide the best service, and that's the engineer. So if we had customer service, I think the quality of our customer service would be much lower if they people were people that were not familiar with how the product is built.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense since the product is so technical. Now, let me ask you this. If for potential future candidates out there, now, why should they join ParadeDB? What would you tell them?
What would I tell them? I mean, we're 4 people, right? It's the opportunity to have so much leverage. Everyone that works at Parade gets to do so much more than they do at other companies, and the design decisions compound over time. So, from that standpoint, I think it's really exciting. Those are the type of people that we also try to attract, right? That want to have a big impact. So that's one. The second one is obviously, the company is doing very well, and when you join a company that's doing well at such an early stage, you also, set yourself up for a very big upside. So I think that's another big reason. And then the third one maybe is there's few people that make big companies out of Postgres or out of databases. So if that's an area of interest, it's probably one of the best ways to capitalize on it.
Got it. Makes sense. Now, Philip, thank you. We've talked a lot about the company, product, market, competition. Let me ask you a question outside of work. What hobbies or activities you have and you like to do?
I do a lot of sports. I
Nice.
play I play badminton pretty regularly. I play soccer sometimes, and I run and I exercise and I swim and all the things like that. So that's kind of how I keep busy. And then the rest is just regular life, maybe you would say, right?
Got
Yeah.
it. And you haven't picked up pickleball yet?
I played pickleball a few times. I played pickleball a few times. I wouldn't say I've picked it up though. No, I've
Okay.
stuck with badminton more. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. And then thank you, Philip. And last question is, what advice would you give to other tech co-founders based on your experience, especially for those who maybe want to break into enterprise sales space? What would you tell them?
I don't know if I have good advice. I'm trying to figure that out myself, to be honest. Yeah, what I've learned so far at least is you want to do very, very few things, but very, very well. And I think that stands for both product and for sales, right? So at least in our early days, we were so tempted. You want to build something big, right? So you want to do a lot of things and do them, but you have the noise level of the world is so high, and you need to reach above the noise level of the world to get people's attention. And that requires doing a very narrow thing incredibly well. So it sort of spikes up, right, in their interest or in the quality. So now we try to build very few things. My co-founder, actually, I attribute a lot of our success here to my co-founder, who's very, very good at doing this and sort of slowing us down when we're trying to like broaden too much. But both in sales and in product, we want to just be incredibly focused. And at least for us so far, doing this has paid off.
Thank you so much, Philip. I've really excited our time, and hopefully we will meet sometime soon again, and you will have even bigger successes and milestones to share.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, thank you for having me.